Well, thank you for coming out on this chilly evening, and I'm Lisa McGinley, the principal here at the junior high school. This is a pretty big milestone for your young people, as they'll be registering for classes this week for 9th grade. For their first round of high school classes, well, they'll be earning credit towards graduation. Our agenda for this evening is we're going to begin by going over the path to college and career. We're going to take you on a little journey this evening. We're going to start out by just sharing with you how that journey to college and career has changed from the time that a lot of us were going through that process and thinking about college and career in our future when we were young people. I want to clarify, though, when I speak of college or we speak of career this evening, we're not just talking about four-year institutions or universities. We're talking about four-year institutions, community, junior colleges, career technical centers, apprentice programs, technical colleges, technical programs. All of those, when we speak tonight, are coming under the vocabulary of college and career readiness. Once we hear from our educational consultant tonight, Charmin Lee, about that path to college and career, we're then going to share with you how you can take a little snapshot of where your child is academically regarding college and career readiness, and as far as career interests that they might have. From there, we'll go on and speak about freshman specifics regarding courses that are available to your young person and what will be available to be registering for this week. We will also be sharing with you that registration process in which you received information about last week, and hopefully you've had time to kind of look at that and read it and process that information. After we show you the process and the timeline we're going to be working through, we then have invited David Ellis, who is a school counselor and coach at Maryville High School, and George Quarles, athletic director and football coach at Maryville High School, to come speak to you about athletics and eligibility. There are specific requirements that the TSSAA and NCAA have regarding athletic eligibility and scholarships and those things of that nature. And then finally, we will be here this evening after the program. If you want to hang around with us and go to our computer labs and register online, or if you would just like to preview that process yourself and have us here to support you if you have questions. However, before we move forward, I just want you to know that this registration process is completely online, and you can do this at any time between today and Sunday evening from any place that you have access to the internet. So don't feel that you have to register for classes tonight or make hasty decisions. You have time after this evening to go home and speak with your child, talk about interests, where you want to head regarding elective courses and such, and take some time to make those selections this week. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that college-bound path. And remember, when I talk about college, we're not just talking about four-year institutions. We're talking about any post-secondary training. And this evening we have Charmin Lee, who is an educational mentor and consultant, who's going to talk with you for about the next 30 minutes about grade point averages, rigor, testing. We knew as we were going through this process years ago, those of us as parents, as the college application process, it's more of a resume type of process. We want to talk about that personal essay. It is more of an essay than a statement, as it has been in years past. We want to talk about some recommendations that we have. So at this time, I'll invite Charmin Lee to come to the microphone, and she's going to share with you some freshman focus information. Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Lisa. What I'm going to do tonight is make this very interactive as much as possible, and just wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself and actually why I'm here during this presentation. And my name is Charmin Lee. I come from North Carolina, so across the mountain, and basically I have a college admissions background and fundraising as well on college campuses. So I've been on the other side of the desk and recruiting in North Carolina and Tennessee for a college in North Carolina, Elon University. And so I am situated in the Triad area near Greensboro, Chapel Hill, and Durham, in that little triangle of North Carolina. So basically, I've read applications, I've read college essays, I know what a resume for the collegiate level should look like. I know about the testing and about the GPA and the rigor, and so that's definitely all the things that we're going to talk about tonight. I would love to dissect those and definitely answer questions that you might have regarding those components. And those are the 6 components, and you've got a handout of what colleges and universities are going to be looking at in your student as they go through this process. So definitely the reason that I am here is to give some information on, in this competitive market of the college admissions world, and you may have sons or daughters or sisters or brothers that have recently gone through this process, or know cousins or relatives that are already in college and have already embarked on this endeavor. But definitely the 8th and 9th grade are the new pinnacle of when you should be starting to think about the college application process and what it entails. Typically the time to start thinking about this, and the norm, so to speak, is going to be this time in the junior year, but I am finding that is absolutely too late to make yourself competitive, to increase your marketability, to make yourself as a student stand out, and to really own the process as a student. So those are the types of things that I really want to focus on tonight, and definitely kind of dissect as we go through this together. But definitely increasing your marketability, starting early. And what I'm finding when I look at resumes, when I start, with students that may want to talk to me as a junior, and the first thing that I ask a student when I talk to them, or if I would talk to your student tonight, is how are you going to set yourself apart amongst thousands of applicants in a pool to a school that you're looking at and making application. So depending on the answer, obviously, we go through some exercises and whatnot, but making yourself stand out in this process is key, and that's why I wanted to be here this evening and share some helpful hints, helpful tidbits at this level, on the 8th and 9th grade levels, to get you started in that motion. And actually, I'm reading a book, and it's called A is for Admission right now. And actually, it was pretty relevant because I'm on chapter 2, and it says the timetable through high school is kindergarten too early to begin the college process. So kindergarten may be a little bit too early, but definitely the eighth grade is going to be perfect, 8th and 9th grade. So definitely wanted to thank the guidance office and Kim and Gina for having me and to help them through this process as well. But what I wanted to do is, if you could actually take out the sheet that you had when you got in, it's the 6 components. I wanted to go through those with you and make sure that you understand fully what each of those means. And depending on a personal preference as far as a school or university that your son or daughter may have, a dream school or a #1, or they're starting to think about this, as they enter into the high school realm. Every college is going to be extremely different in everything, in standards, in testing, and what they're looking for as far as an essay requirement, etc. But basically, and these 6 components are going to be prioritized very, very differently. For example, but if you're looking at a particular school, they may really value essays over recommendations, or they may, if they're test optional, if there are some schools that are test optional out there and they don't consider testing as one of these components, then an interview or essays are going to jump very, very high on the list. But the common denominator is going to be GPA. That is going to be the common thread that every single school that your son or daughter is going to be looking at making application. The GPA is going to be the best indicator, and it's the most indicative component of how they're going to perform on the collegiate level based on how they've done at the high school level. Okay, so definitely, if you don't take anything from my presentation tonight, definitely knowing that the GPA is going to be very, very important in looking at this journey. So the GPA, obviously, if you could actually take a mental picture of a transcript, and just think, pretty much now it's a clean slate, and, you definitely want that upward progression in the high school and obviously level. So 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, you want to see that upward slope with the GPA. Now, with the rigor, the rigor is, you don't need to take every single AP class at Maryville High School. Definitely you want to challenge yourself to the best curriculum that you as a student and parents that your son or daughter can actually, really own and do well in. So if honors or just any level that they are going to be able to do well, if they're in AP and they shouldn't be in AP, recognize that and definitely that can be addressed. But definitely whatever level they are in, own that, and they can do well in that. So it doesn't have to be all APs. If they're not at that level, they will not be penalized for that. So just know that the rigor is also very important, and I have that as number 2, but it's definitely not, again, these are in no particular priority. But the rigor is very helpful and very important. The testing, I know that Tennessee is typically an ACT testing state, but the SAT is another outlet, and I think that needs to be on a lot of students' radar, especially if ACT is not their test of choice. So typically I will tell students, you're going to gravitate to one or the other. You're either going to be an ACT guy or gal, or you're going to be an SAT guy or gal. So I think to really know the test and to really know what challenges may embark upon the test taking in general is to take one of each, obviously. So collegeboard.org for the SAT, ACT.org for the ACT. So it just really depends on, the 2 separate tests. Highest you can make on the ACT obviously is a 36. Highest you can make on the SAT is a 2400, and they're just completely opposite in testing. So most schools and universities, most colleges and universities are going to accept either test, and then they're going to super score these tests. And when I say super score, that means that if there's 2 SATs and then there's or 2 ACTs, they're going to take the best, they're going to break these into the subjects on the testing and take the best math or the best science or whatever test. You can't combine the ACT and the SAT together, but you'll have 2 SATs to compare for the super score, or you'll have 2 ACTs to compare. So typically, if you gravitate to one or the other, you'll know. So I would suggest, you know, in this early on proactive state that you're in, I would definitely take one SAT and one ACT in your early times here. In your high school career, to see to which one you will gravitate, and then go from there and see where your weaknesses are, and if there are any shades of, you know, just black or white that need to be kind of worked out to get your higher score or to get your scores up. But definitely, I know that the SAT is not typical, but I know that some students do take them here in the state, so I would definitely put that on your radar as just food for thought for sure. Now with I'm going to skip resume and then go towards the essay component. And with essay, it's pretty universal. Some schools will have an essay component, some will not. Again, very, very different. Every single word on your essays are actually read, and a lot of, you know, there's a lot of skepticism about that. Do they really read it? Do they really look at every single word? And they really, really do. That's why your lag time of finding out sometimes is you know, a couple months away, because they're steadily reading and sometimes even having 2 reads on an application and on your essay. So essays are very, very telling in a student. And it's either maybe a personal statement that you will have to write about, and I tell students definitely to find a passion and to write about this, and that's, you know, writing and taking, you know, writing courses and your English and definitely doing well in those courses. They're going to help you with writing your essays, obviously. But definitely I tell students, you know, don't write about your relationship with your grandfather and possibly a mission trip that you take to the Dominican Republic with your church youth group, because, and I'm sure those are wonderful, I'm sure that the grandfathers are amazing and that the mission trips are very exciting, and that you learn a lot about yourself from these roles, but everybody in America they're writing about these particular topics. So to find something that is unique and to make you stand out in the process, I think is very, very important. And just to give you an example, I was working with a student recently, and she was very adamant about her writing about her essay on a mission trip that she recently took to the Appalachian Mountains with her church youth group. They were there for about 2 months doing just complete volunteering. And so she was very adamant. She said, I'm writing my essay to NYU on this mission trip. And so I sometimes feel like I'm a magician pulling the scarves, you know, out of students' mouths and just let them talk to me and give me all the details. And so I was trying to find a hook, and that's something else to know about an essay, is that you need to have a hook and definitely know that this is something that will make you stand out in this particular component. But anyway, she wanted to do her essay on this mission trip. It was she was very convicted to do that. So I started asking her questions about anything that was bizarre or maybe abnormal about this trip. And she said, well, we didn't have any technology. I didn't have my iPhone, I didn't have my iPad, I didn't have anything that would distract me from actually doing my work, and that was your hook. So basically it was a stellar essay, and it was, you know, imagine a 17-year-old girl, you know, without any technology for about 2 months, and that's how she started her essay. So little things like that I think are very, very helpful, because it makes the admissions person or the admissions team want to read more, to find out, well, what happened? How did she survive without her technology? So I think little things like that really, it's very, very simple, and it makes you stand out. So I think that's really something to think about. With recommendations, I think that's really great to start thinking about relationships that you build on the high school level, because that's going to be very important when you're looking at the recommendations on the collegiate level. And I think that two things need to happen for a recommendation, and the person that you formulate a relationship with, whether it be a teacher or a coach or a youth pastor or someone in your community that knows you very well, that can write about your character and your work ethic. I think those are the two main things that colleges and universities are looking for in an actual recommendation. These two things are very, very strong elements in in a really great recommendation on any level. And I think that definitely these two characteristics are going to be very, very strong. And then, you know, if a teacher is writing a recommendation for you, they want to know, colleges and universities want to know, are you a leader in the classroom? Are you going to be a leader on my campus? So really taking that leadership role in the classroom and that participation is really, really vital, and something that a teacher is going to be able to speak about in a really, really great college recommendation for you, for sure. Now, with the resume, I want to go back to the resume actually. And this is you know, resume / extracurricular activities. And this is my favorite part of the actual application. And if you think about these 6 components with the grade point average, the rigor, and the testing, they're all 3 number related or course related. So the latter of the 3, the resume, the essay, and the recommendations, really humanize the process. So they really make these 3 components with the resume, the essay, and the recommendations really make the application come to life. And if you are not interviewing, you know, at a school for whatever reason, you know, then these really make you stand out. So these 3 pieces need to be very, very strong. Okay, with the resume. So there are 4 additional components with the resume that I wanted to speak about, and those are, and again, in no order, but leadership is one. So leadership, service immersion, volunteering, and then community service, and I'll repeat that. So with the resume, it's going to be leadership and service immersion, volunteering, and then community service. So definitely right now, students especially, these are the types of things that need to keep you busy for the next 4 years or so, and definitely immersing yourself in these activities. You know, the most disheartening thing that I see when I get a resume of a junior that is starting, you know, looking at the process, and I see babysitting and church youth group on the resume, and, you know, they're looking at a top 1 or top tier school, and unfortunately babysitting and church youth group are wonderful activities, but if that's all that is going to be on the resume, unfortunately nowadays in this competitive market, in this competitive field, it's not going to be competitive enough to make you stand out. So I think that those 4 things that I just mentioned, you don't have to have all 4, but you have to have some variation of those. And I think one thing that I wanted to mention with this is it really is important for a student, and I'm going to use air quotes again, to find their patent. And by that I mean I was working with a student that was looking at a very prestigious school in Dallas, Rice University, and he was there visiting his grandmother for spring break and just thought that he would, you know, while he was in Dallas, he would take a look at Rice. And he came back and he was freaked out, and he said, you know, deer in headlights look, and he said, when you go to a school and you do an official visit, and you'll find this out during your campus visits eventually, there's a sheet of an inquiry card that you fill out, and that gets you on the mailing list for open houses and just the communication to start with on the high school level. And on this particular school, after he wrote down his high school and his address and whatnot, they had an area for a high school student to list their patents that they've created and or some undergraduate research that they've done. So he did not feel confident enough to really have a good feeling about applying to Rice University. But what he didn't understand is that he had started a little orphanage in South America, and that was, air quotes again, his patent. So he didn't invent something, but he went over to another country and actually started an orphanage through a grant through his high school, and that became his essays, and that became, what he talked about in a lot of his applications. And he was accepted to Rice, and he's now at SMU in Dallas. So basically, that's an example that I give to students, that you don't have to start an orphanage in South Africa at all, but every student has a patent, and you just have to figure out what that is. So I tell you that at this level so you can be thinking about that, and any volunteer services that you do, or anything that can set you apart. And doing things in the summer is fantastic, and starting now is the time. Anything that goes on, anything that you do in the summer before your 9th grade year goes into your 9th grade activities, and then you start building your resume from there. So anything that's, again, in the summer before your 9th grade year, that starts. So think about that, and just start building, maybe a game plan for the next 4 years, and maybe set, this is where I'm going to volunteer here, or this is going to be maybe an internship that I could, strive for here, or this is a mission trip that I'm going to try to do this summer. And so every year you're building on your resume, and that's something that is a huge game changer for you at this level. It really is going to set you apart for sure. Another example, and on the resume, you need to be very descriptive. So you can start taking notes now, anything that you're doing now to keep you busy until the 12th grade. So all of your activities now, you can go ahead and start this resume actually, and you can just write down on a piece of notebook paper, or keep it logged into Word on your computer with a file for every single grade. But it's very important. I was looking over a resume recently, and the student had 3 weeks Belize, the country Belize, 3 weeks, and that's all he had on his resume. So I thought, obviously, with my admissions mind, I thought that he had put down his family vacation because it was summer. It was during the summer, 3 weeks Belize. You think that that's a family vacation. And so I asked him about it, and I said, Josh, you can't put your family vacation on your college resume. And he said, well, it's not a vacation. That was my 3-week underwater internship with National Geographic. So that was a little vague. So we made that we beautified that a little bit. We got some pictures of him in his underwater internship holding the National Geographic banner, which was kind of a big deal. And, that to say that if I hadn't pulled the scarves out, that would still be considered probably a family vacation. So I think that, again, being very descriptive and very detailed in anything that you do, whether you have a dog sitting business, or whether you are a nanny, or anything that you feel may not be, it's kind of a petty, centric to you, it's a big deal to put on your resume. So I think at this level, you need to be thinking absolutely 100% about building this resume, because what is happening on the college level is that colleges and universities now, you might be hearing the word holistic approach to admissions, and holistic means that they're looking at you as a whole and not just a test score or a GPA or even the rigor that your high school projects. So definitely they're looking more at these resumes that really set you apart. They're looking at the words that you use in your essays, and they're really looking at these recommendations because, again, they humanize the entire package, okay? So definitely starting the resume now is just fantastic, because you don't want to be a junior and be literally on the cusp of applying to schools and just have babysitting and church youth group on your resume. You need to be, you know, as competitive as the other students that are applying to those schools, and having, you know, not these same identical experiences, but experiences that create your own pattern that you can kind of make your own and share in whatever form you wish. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is as you take PSATs, or as you get higher up, you know, with your exposure to colleges or universities on any level, or to your schools, or any touch that you can have with an institution, a higher ed institution, you need to do it. So for example, when I say a touch, that equals demonstrated interest. So the college fair that Maryville College has, I know in this area, because I used to do that for Elon, but it's a fantastic opportunity for you to go at any level and just grab information, because a lot of schools are represented there. You never know if the person standing behind the table at the college fair is an actual decision maker. So you definitely want to project, you know, a good impression on that institution and get on their mailing list. And obviously, like I said, you know, you'll fill out those inquiry cards, and that will get you on the mailing list. And so every time you have an email with an institution, every time you go to visit a campus, every time you make a phone call, if they have your data logged in, they're going to enter that into their system as what we call in admissions as a touch. And so at that, if you start that maybe in your 9th grade year, then by the time and you stay with the same school and your interest just accelerates, etc., in a particular school or a couple particular schools, and by the time that you're a junior or a senior, and they look at your data file and you've got a lot of touches, that's going to speak volumes at the time of admission. And you know, there are some students that actually apply to schools and they never set foot on the campus. And so, as far as demonstrated interest goes, you know, that does not bode well with them. But however, that's where the touches really come into play. So if you've not been to a college fair, you could go to the Maryville College Fair in the fall and definitely start that process, and they will definitely keep track of that. So whenever I call up a school, whether I call Vandy or Chapel Hill or Rhodes or UT even, I mean, they are able to tell me the correspondence with the student, and that's really impressive to know that the touches are being recorded and they're being documented on any capacity. So if you just send an email and say, hey, you know, I was inducted into National Honor Society and I just wanted to add that to my file, that's a touch. So that's something that's really, really important. The other thing is every college or university, 4-year, 2-year, they're going to have what's called a territory manager. And whether you're looking at schools out west, on the East Coast, Midwest, wherever, they are going to have a territory manager either for the state of Tennessee or for maybe even Blount County or actually Maryville, Knoxville area. They may divide the state into certain areas. But this territory manager is someone that needs to be your best friend throughout the year. So if it's been your dream to go to UT and you go to the college fair at Maryville College in the fall and you meet the rep from UT and you shake their hand and you start that relationship, you need to make sure that person is the territory manager for Maryville or for Blount County, and possibly even start that relationship as a freshman, or as a sophomore, junior, senior. That relationship is just going to build, and that's going to be your biggest cheerleader on that college campus. And so every single school is going to have that territory manager, and that's going to be definitely a best friend, friend for life in the coming years. Definitely don't stalk that person. Don't send an email every day. I've always, wanted to go to your school. I'm your biggest fan. Definitely, monitor and modify how often you make those touches, but nonetheless, they are very important. One thing that I did want to touch on is deadlines. And I know that it's not time to address that as of yet, but this piece is pretty important. If your son or daughter, or students, if you have a dream school and you know right now that's your place, that's where you want to be, that's where you need to be, that's where you feel called to be, then what I would do at this level is make sure maybe the deadlines. For example, I had a student that just got an early decision to Duke, and Duke has been his dream. He's a legacy there. His dog's name is Duke. I mean, it's a Duke family. So he knew, bar none, by the time he was a senior, he was applying early decision to Duke. So he knew full force. So what that did is it put him in a application pool of 3,000 for early decision to Duke rather than 28,000 regular decision to Duke. So if you know of a path that you are diehard, that's really the only reason why I wanted to mention these deadlines this early. But it's very helpful because you don't just wake up your junior or senior year and decide, I think I'm gonna go to try to go to a top 1, top 2, top 3 tier school. So again, building the resume, the essays, the recommendations, all of the whole package, all of this comes into play, and literally tomorrow you're going to be seniors, truly. So I think before time slips away, I'm just really excited to have this opportunity to plant some seeds early on that I think are going to make huge differences in the way that you will spend, hopefully, your next 3 or 4 years in this process. But a couple more things, and then I'm going to wrap up. But I think that part of this, when I say for the students to own the process, that's really what I preach, is that a student owns his or her college search, and by owning it, they are responsible for it. They're looking at creating those volunteer opportunities. They're looking at doing the best coursework they can. They're looking and they're doing research earlier online. If they see a school that catches their interest, well, let me check this out and see what their testing looks like. I want to be an engineer. What are the best engineering options for me in this proximity to my home or around Blount County? So I think that research is key, and I think self-initiative with the student and taking that ownership of their process is absolutely key. And to try to take some risks as well, and I tell families all the time, Tennessee is amazing for schools, as is North Carolina. When I'm working with students in North Carolina, we've got an amazing school system of private and public schools. So when I am working with students in North Carolina and I choreograph spring break trips for them to go and look for spring breaks, and I'm doing that as early as 9th grade spring breaks now. Families are going and looking at colleges on 9th grade spring break, so that's great. They're being very proactive. You don't have to do that, but if you're in Charleston for spring break, or Hilton Head, and there are colleges obviously down there, you might want to just go by and do, a drive-by, or, if you're down in Florida, and there are many schools down there. So basically, the moral is that students freak out whenever I put maybe University of South Carolina or Clemson or College of Charleston, if they're going down to South Carolina for spring break, they have kind of a freak out moment because it's not in North Carolina. So I try to have them take risks and kind of think outside the box. That there are other schools, in the country, other than Chapel Hill and NC State. They don't really know that, but there are. So I think that it's definitely something that you need to just think about, as you go through the process, because you have so much time to do something different and amazing every year. And whether that's looking at schools on vacation, make sure that you sign in some capacity in the admissions office and put your name on the list. Again, remembering those touches, going to the college fair, shaking hands, and having just a very well-versed conversation with a potential decision maker in the future for your application process. So that pretty much concludes what I have to say as far as the top 6. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer? We can. Okay, perfect. I will be available afterwards if you have any individual questions, and we can address those for sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, after hearing all of that, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, my child's just in 8th grade. What are we talking about this path? We're telling you the takeaway is it is not too early to start. It is much more involved than it used to be. So starting with 9th grade, you need to start building out what is that resume. You need to be thinking about what are you going to do as a young person outside of your academics to set you apart. It's not too early to start researching where your interests lie and what kind of training is involved with that. The last thing we want is for you to get towards graduation and then go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I needed to do this. I didn't know that they were looking at that. So take the time now to start that journey and thinking about where you want to go after you walk across that stage as a senior and graduate from high school. So what I'm going to do now is let's go back, bring this all back down into reality to today. And we're going to take a snapshot at college and career readiness. We heard Ms. Lee talk about rigor and GPA. Still a firm believer that the academic intensity of the student's high school curriculum still counts more than anything else in relation to completing a bachelor's degree. So as we're going through this registration process, I want you to talk to your son or daughter about maintaining the most academic rigor that they can handle. It is important. It doesn't all have to be the AP class, the honors, or CP. It's what they can handle is the most rigor that they can, and challenge themselves. That's the important thing. You need to be thinking about what do I want my child to get out of school. Next year is the freshman year, and after they leave this building, some people get a little bit, they're like, what? When I say 36 months and they're graduating. It's not long, it's quick. It's going to go by fast. So you need to think today, what do you want your child to get out of high school? A place to take a quick look is the 8th grade Explorer. We sent those home with your child on January the 9th. It's going to give you a quick academic snapshot on that score sheet as well as a career interest inventory. The Explore test is actually part of a bigger picture. It's known as the Educational Planning and Assessment System, or EPASS, from ACT. I know Ms. Lee talked about the SAT, but we live in Tennessee, and Tennessee is an ACT state. The majority of schools in the Southeast that are your State Board of Regents types of schools do require the ACT, and the state of Tennessee requires it as well in the 11th grade. So students are required to take the ACT as an 11th grader before they graduate from high school. In the 8th grade, we have the Explore. In the 10th grade, they'll take the Plan. These are all part of the ACT suite of assessments. There is a relationship between the scales of these three tests. The highest score a student can make on the Explore is a 25. The Plan is a 32, and of course on the ACT is a 36. There is also a degree of predictability from one test to the other. The score sheet that you received on January the 9th looks like what's on the screen. The top part of the score sheet includes the academic information based on how your child performed on the 8th grade Explore, and the lower part is all the interest inventory and career planning information that will help springboard those conversations that you'll have with your young people about programs of study in high school, elective focus areas, those kinds of things. You also received a booklet that explains how to read that score sheet. So what does your child's score mean? You can see outlined here the composite score of a 15 on this score sheet. What this means in that first column is how the student compared to other students in the United States. We can see that that composite of a 15 indicates that this student performed better than 64% of the other students in the country. In the school, better than 60% of the students within the school for which the score report was generated. In English, it's broken down into mechanics and rhetoric skills. One of the things we do find is that students struggle the most with rhetoric skills, so we're trying to address that more just even here at the junior high school. But those two English sub-scores make up the English composite score. I show you this slide because for several years now, as a middle school and then as a junior high school, we continue to outperform the national average here. Our students are not average students in our country, they perform above average. I showed you before that relationship between the Explore, the Plan, and the ACT. On your student score report, there is a section where you can find what they are estimated to make on the Plan as a 10th grader. This particular student is estimated to score a composite score of a 15 to 18 on the Plan as a 10th grader. You'll also find on your score report what your child indicated for plans for high school and beyond. Oftentimes we see that they think that they're only going to take like 3 English courses, 2 science courses, even though our school counselors meet with them and discuss the requirements for graduation. You can kind of look at this part of that report and get an idea of your child's thinking and where maybe they're not challenging themselves enough. I'm often asked about the ACT College Readiness benchmarks and what do they actually mean. As you can see on the slide, a benchmark score is the minimum score needed on an ACT subject area test to indicate a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher, or about a 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher in the corresponding credit-bearing college course. So if students meet those readiness benchmarks, which you see here for the ACT Plan and Explore, if they're meeting those benchmarks, they have a 50% chance of being, when they're a freshman in college, making an a B or higher in a college level course, or a 75% chance. Historically, the research tells us of making that C or higher. On the score report, there's a section where you can take a look at that, and it'll tell you if your child is on track to being ready for college courses. It'll also tell you some suggestions on what can be done if they're missing a benchmark. Here's a part that's always fun to look at. It's the career possibilities. So you can look at this on your child's score report and start that conversation about areas of interest as far as potential careers for the future, areas to maybe job shadow, take an internship as a student at Maryville High School, maybe do an independent study, but to start that talk now and to start thinking about what those kinds of experiences might be or entail for your child. As students go into the 9th grade, we shift from what we know as our TCAP tests to what we call EOC exams. Beginning next year with your child as a 9th grader, they'll be expected to take end-of-course tests. These tests count 25% as second semester averages. And in the 9th grade, we take the English 1, Biology 1, and Algebra 1 EOCs. We'll talk freshman specifics. Most courses in the freshman year are worth 1 credit. A few courses towards graduation are a half a credit. You can see the course catalog posted on both the junior high and the high school blackboards and web pages under registration materials. Students have the ability to earn 32 credits in 4 years, and the state requires 28 for graduation. All students will pursue a focused program of study, preparing them for post-secondary study. That's why it's important to really start looking at that career interest. Students will complete an elective focus of no less than 3 credits between the 9th and the 12th grade year. Here are some examples of those elective focus areas. In the 9th grade, the courses that we offer span many of these, so don't feel like you got to zero in and settle on something that can't be changed between now and the 12th grade. We also offer career technical education beginning in the 9th grade that fall under these areas. Again, refer to the course catalog if you want to see greater detail. An elective course that is not required but selected because of interest is an elective course. We also need for you to select 2 alternates when you register. If we have scheduling conflicts that result, meaning we can't get core academics scheduled when they're available, then we'll use an alternate course for an elective. Or if an elective course fills up and there's no more seats available. Sorry, this is progressing slowly. As you well know, we use letter grades here at the junior high school, just as the high school. The scales are the same as what we use for the various levels of courses in the 8th grade, so that's not different for you. Other than whereas semester exams and the TCAP count 15%, in the 9th grade they now count 25%. I'm often asked this, so we're going to go through this quickly. If you want greater detail, you can access this information at the Maryville High School website. Often asked by 8th grade parents, student going into 9th grade, what about graduating with distinction or with honors? Because sometimes we think that 9th grade is a dramatic aspect of that. Students will be recognized as graduating with distinction by attaining a B or 3.0 average and completing at least one of the following. Now, Ms. Lee talked about all these different things, these really extraordinary experiences students were having and putting on their resumes going into college. There are several opportunities at Maryville High School for those kinds of extraordinary experiences. You can earn a nationally recognized industry certification. You can participate in at least one of the governor's schools. Participate in at least one of the state's all-state musical organizations. Be selected as a National Merit Finalist or semifinalist. Attain a score of a 31 or higher composite score on the ACT. Attain a score of 3 or higher on at least 2 advanced placement exams. And earn 12 or more semester hours of transcripted post-secondary credit. And students who score at or above all of those subject area benchmarks I mentioned earlier on the ACT will graduate with honors. Maryville High School also has a National Honor Society, which is a service and honor organization for juniors and seniors. This is where some of that community service piece can come in, as well as through our own National Honor Society and the community service piece that we require. Maryville offers the Maryville Scholars Program to 11th and 12th graders. On this slide, I'm not going to go through all of it, but I think the thing to make clear here is that 9th grade is not considered in Maryville High School selections for National Honor Society or for Maryville Scholars, and sometimes that's confusing. That kind of information begins in the 10th grade, particularly with taking honors or AP English in 10 through 12. Again, this is just information about their scholars program that they offer, because we're asked that. We're going to get into what we've all been waiting for, which is the registration process and timeline. This slide is important, and this PowerPoint will be housed on our website under the registration information. But we sent home on January the 21st registration information to you. The window for online student registration is today through Sunday, and you can register your child from anywhere there's internet access. Student registration verifications will be mailed home February the 27th. That's not a schedule of classes, that's just a listing of classes your child is registered for. We want to make sure that we have the correct classes identified and registered for your student in our PowerSchool system. The window for online elective changes, meaning we'll open up the registration window again if you decide you want to take a different elective than what you originally signed up for, will be March 6th through March 10th. The window for placement review, if a student was recommended for a level of placement in a core academic class and you would like for that to be considered for something different, then that review period will be March 23rd through April 10th. You can contact the school counseling office here, fill out a change of review for change of placement, and we'll be glad to look at that. Development of the master schedule here at the junior high is in April and May. Schedules are mailed prior to the first day of school. However, we've been fortunate the last 3 years we've been able to get them to you by the end of the first week of June. I'm not going to guarantee that, barring we don't have some catastrophe. But if we stay on track, you should be getting that around the end of the first week of June. And if your child intends to take wellness in summer school, that does usually encompass the last week of May and the first 3 weeks of June. If you would like to consider taking wellness in summer school to open up another class period during the school year for another type of class other than wellness. On the registration page, there is a place where you can select that you are intending to take wellness in summer school. I'm not going to go through all of this other than you did receive this in the mail. This is the placement criteria in addition to your current students' grades and teachers' professional judgments in making that initial recommendation for core academics. You were also given this information in the mail last week. One thing I want to clarify here is the codes that you see literally are honors courses down to big CP, little CP. So when you go online, it's those course codes that you'll see. And the elective courses are also listed on the sheet of paper we mailed to you. There's all the elective courses available. Here on change of schedule, what I want to lift up to you is if there is something that needs to be reviewed, we're willing to do that. We do pretty open schedule changes during the first 10 days of school, but our goal is to get that all cleaned up during that window in March and clean up any last loose ends that need to be tied up regarding any kind of change requests over the summer. Our master schedule is built on course requests, so you can understand that we hire personnel, we put people in place to teach certain